Hello, hello, hello. It is your girl, Kristen, and I'm back with another video for you all. So, I wanted to come on and share a little bit more directly about how I got passionate about strategic operations and why it's so important to me. I know I've talked a little bit about my experience as a project manager and my background in public health, but what you may not know, especially if you don't know me in real life, is that I actually established a nonprofit organization with one of my dear friends in 2018. I established our nonprofit organization to really help and support communities that were looking to do health equity related work and projects. And here in Houston in 2018, the mayor had an initiative that was really focused on addressing health equity in communities. And so that's kind of the foundation for how our nonprofit organization got started. And when I had the idea to establish my nonprofit organization, which we'll have a whole nother video at another time of like really how the idea came to me, because that's a whole different story. I knew the basics of how to start a nonprofit organization. My mom and my grandma had established a nonprofit many years ago, so I was familiar with the basic kind of framework and bones of a nonprofit organization. But the part that nobody really talks about that's super important in business in general, but I feel like nobody really talks about in the nonprofit sector, is the importance of your back end operations. I was really excited about the mission and vision and putting all the products and services out there that we wanted to do. But what really the crux of the work is really the back end operations. Because if your administrative side and those operations in the background are not set up for success, it's going to make it really hard for your vision to come into fruition. So I want to share a little bit about my story. So in 2018, at that particular time, when I started my nonprofit organization, I was working full time at a hospital, and I was also a full time graduate student pursuing my master's in public health at that time. And I was super excited, super passionate about health equity. So when the idea for my nonprofit came to me, I was excited. I knew what to do in terms of like the paperwork, getting the board together, and so I was able to do that relatively quickly. But once you kind of get all of your approvals from like the state, you get your designation back from the IRS, it's really on you to start scaling and growing the organization. And so that's what I did. And with that comes a lot of meetings, a lot of grant applications, a lot of collaborations. And I was trying to manage all of that while still managing being in school, working full time at the hospital. And so things were a little chaotic there for a while, but I thought that was just part of the process. Like I thought everybody had 50,000 sticky notes, a whole bunch of tabs open, inbox full of emails that they had not responded to. Like I just thought that was part of the process. But as we continue to grow and scale the organization, I realized that even if that was supposed to be a part of the process, it wasn't going to be sustainable, A, for my well-being, and B, for the organization. And so I really had to have a come to Jesus with myself about how we could have better systems and processes in place for the organization. Because as the founder, as the leader, a lot of things are my responsibility, right? Like a lot of things that is my cross to bear for the organization. But having files in 1,000 different places, having emails for partnerships and people that wanted to collab with us that I wasn't responding to like 3 and 4 weeks at a time, sticky notes all over the place, all of that just got to be a little bit too much and wasn't allowing us to really function, and wasn't allowing me to really function at my highest and fullest capacity on behalf of the organization. And I think for a while, I thought it was just me, right? Like I felt like I was just disorganized. I was just a chaos muppet. I needed to get my stuff together, and that would have a ripple effect. And that wasn't really true. And I tried to do that. Like there will be months where I would go into the office, I'd be there all day Saturday, responding to all the emails, doing all the receipts, doing all the financial reconciliations, looking at the grant reports, trying to make them, send them in, all of these different things. And I would still end up in the same place like 3 to 4 weeks later. And as I continued to evolve in my role as a leader and as a person in general, because I founded this organization in my early 20s and I'm now 30. So throughout that evolution, I really had to have a come to Jesus with myself, especially as I started to move more into my doctoral journey. Because even through this time, I graduated with my master's, went back for my doctorate degree. So I even had transitions that I was working through. And I was like, okay, Kristen, you are a project manager by training. How about you apply what you tell everybody to do at work to your own personal business, right? So I'm used to telling people what to do, but I wasn't necessarily used to taking my own advice. And that is where I started actually developing systems and processes to support how I work so that I could better show up in the work that I was doing and just be whole and well just as a human being in general. And so what that looked like for me was taking some time to really get everything out of my head of like all of the things that I do as it relates to how I manage my inbox, how I handle things related to our finances, the things that need to happen as it relates to like personnel management, because as a leader I was wearing all the hats. I was HR, I was IT, I was operations, and I really had to be honest about, okay, Kristen, you are holding a lot. Let's at least take the first step of brain dumping everything out. And of course, I have great team members that I relied on. So as soon as I came to that realization myself, I was able to ask for additional support. But even in that support, I still had to tell people like how to get things done. And so that's where I was able to develop systems and processes. And I want to be clear, systems and processes don't have to be anything complicated or robust. We're not talking about 40 and 50 page SOP or standard operating procedure documents. We're not talking about anything like that. Just clear steps of how you manage emails, how you handle finances. And that helped me alleviate some of the sticky note chaos because I had notes on sticky notes, I had notes in different journals. And so really being able to consolidate them in a way that was easier for me to find and navigate. And that let me know what I needed to do at any given time, because that's the other thing about operations. They're not fun. It is not an enjoyable thing to sit down and do account reconciliations. And so having a clear process and steps let me know, okay, on Monday, we respond to like 3 to 5 emails. I have a clear categorization for my inbox, right, of different flags and things. And we did have some funding. So I was able to have a VA come in and support us and get me kind of together, but still, you still have to be able to outline what it is you want to do. And so that's a little bit about my process and how I came into being passionate about strategic operations, because once I saw the difference in working in a process and system and having practices and rhythms that support how I work and how I want to show up, everything changed. Like I said, I have a clear process for how I respond to emails on certain days. I have a clear process of when things need to be handled for finance so that our bookkeeping staff can support us. And that is my rhythm of how I work. Obviously, as things change, those processes shift, right? These are things that I revisit. What's working well, what's not working well. For example, I used to have meetings with finance on like a Thursday, and I was like, okay, that's not going to work this semester. And we changed them, right? And so there is a practice and a process that you can develop to support you in how you work and how you want to show up. And I want to be able to share that wisdom and information with other people, because I think, again, it's a part of the work that nobody talks about. Everybody always talks about, yeah, we fundraised all this money, and yes, we launched this program, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, our operations matter as well, because if we don't have operations on the back end to support us, then what we risk seeing and having is burnout. We risk not being well and whole in the process. And our work matters. We are people too, and people need our offerings out in the world. And I want people to feel whole and well and supported in that process. So that's a little bit of my spiel today. Before I go, I also want to let you know that I am hosting a workshop at the end of this month on May 29th called Good Trouble Operations, where we're going to walk through in more detail my process of how I had systems, or how I now have systems in place to support me. I'm going to go over the 3 areas that leaders and founders typically get stuck on, and that's email and inbox management, financial management, and team and people management. So if that is something that is interesting to you, be sure to check out the link in my bio for registration, and I will check in with you all next time. Don't forget to do something that brings you joy.